Okay, I'm doing cheesy chickpea melt. I've got olive oil in here. I've got garlic. I'm just gonna fry it up. Just not for long. It's gonna be in there until it just starts to go brown. You don't want it to go too brown. It becomes bitter. And to that, I'm now gonna add just a teaspoon of tomato paste. Actually, the recipe calls for harissa, but I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I don't have it. So as a substitute, we've got 1 teaspoon of tomato paste and 1/8 of a teaspoon of chili flakes. Obviously, you can add more if you want. And you're just gonna cook that until the tomato paste begins to brown. And which is about a minute, if that. It depends. With a cast iron, it probably will go a little bit, it'll go browner before that. And I'm not going to lift it up and show you because I'll just burn myself. So we're going to do that. Next up is we're going to add, it's about 400, but I think the cans are 398 milliliters, but we're going to add to this the chickpeas, which have been rinsed, and I'm just going to throw them in. And I know this is bigger than a 400 ml tin of tomatoes, but I took some out, and I'm going to add the equivalent amount of tomatoes in there. I choose, I don't shop. My husband does the shopping, but we went with just a flavored diced tomato. You could use whole tomatoes. You would just need to chop them up. You can use anything. And the ones I used previously were garlic and pepper, or you can go plain. It's totally up to your palate. So I'm gonna also, to that, I'm gonna add just 1/3 of a cup of water. And what I'm gonna do is we just need to let it, I'll turn it back up, and it just needs to come to a boil. And then what it's gonna do is the liquid will reduce. And I'm just gonna keep, just keep stirring it from time to time. One thing I do, I don't know, this is just fussy. I don't like round chickpeas. Like they roll off when I'm trying to put them on the toast. I'm gonna take my potato masher, I'm gonna flatten them. It just, I don't know. It's just the way I prefer to eat them when I'm doing this. You don't have to, it's a personal preference. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that.
Is that cast iron you're using to cook in, Julie?
It is. It cooks a lot faster if we use this. But it doesn't, I mean, obviously it doesn't matter. It just, once I put this on the toast, and you guys will get an idea as to the texture. And now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add just some salt and some Italian seasoning. And I'm going to give it a stir. And I'm just going to keep stirring it every couple minutes until essentially the liquid is absorbed. Now, again, it's to taste and it's your preference. So I don't know, if you want it drier, then you cook it longer. If you don't, then obviously, you know, it's to your personal preference. Cooking it doesn't really do anything except get rid of the liquid. Now, I'm going to go, so I've got sourdough here and a piece of gluten-free bread. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a light coating of olive oil on both sides. And then I'm going to take it and just roast or broil it. Actually, I have to turn my oven on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put the oil on both sides, and I'm going to broil it. But I mean, it's up to you. My personal preference is to broil both sides. The actual recipe just says broil one, but I find it gets a little bit soggy. And as long as when you do put the tomato topping on, you cover it all, then you don't run the risk of burning it for putting it back in the oven for the second time. So maybe I can take this. I'm going to see if I can show you what it looks like in the. So there is my tomato and chickpea cooking. And I'm going to continue to stir that, and I'm just going to broil. Sorry. Technology. I've got my flour canister holding you up. So, so that's it. I'm going to do that while we switch over to Jen to show us how to do the hummus. And then once Jen's done her cooking demonstration, then we're going to come back to me. And at that point, I'll be ready to put the tomato and cheese on top of the bread, and then we'll put it in the oven to toast it. Just in case I have to do it, because it's just time for me to do it. The last step of this is adding a green, like whether you want to use spinach, arugula, it doesn't matter. But right at the very end, when you're kind of satisfied with the consistency, that's when you add in your greens, and then you just turn it off so that you don't overcook it. Any questions before we go back to Jen?
Where did you get this recipe?
Where I get all my recipes from the internet.
Pinterest? Oh.
No, actually, I just Googled it. I mean, I tried a lot of different recipes, but this one, the thing I like about this one is it's flexible. And the other thing you can do, I don't know, I love eggs and tomatoes. So you can fry an egg and put it on top of the toasted bread, and then put the tomatoes on top with cheese. And honestly, that's a full meal. For me, that's a meal.
Yum.
So it's, yeah, I mean, it's something you can experiment with, right? I never thought I'd be sitting here talking about chickpeas and tomatoes and making a meal of it, but it's good. Well, okay, I'm biased, but I think it's okay. It's quick. And the thing is, it keeps. So you can just refrigerate the chickpea mix after, and then the next day you can whip up a sandwich in 5 minutes. So anyways, I'll show you the finished product shortly.
We're going to get all these recipes, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the recipes get sent out to you afterward.
Well, that sounds fabulous. Being a vegetarian, I like it already.
Yeah. Oh, good. Good.
Okay,
right.
Thanks, Julie. Over to you, Jen.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a creamy hummus. Hummus is really easy to make, and the reason that this one is I've experimented with many different recipes, but this one seems to be our go-to because it gets the creamiest hummus that you can get. And I like it better than store-bought because it doesn't have palm oil or any weird ingredients in it, and it's pretty quick to make. But the order is what's important. So I'm going to start, and I don't think my food processor will be too loud. I'm going to start with the juice, about 1/4 of a cup of fresh lemon juice. And if you don't have a real lemon, then you could use the lemon juice concentrate, but you might want to just use a little bit less and add water to make 1/4 of a cup. And we're going to put tahini in with the lemon juice and the food processor, and then whip it up. And tahini, I'm using there's different brands. This is a sesame seed paste. You can get it at most grocery stores if you don't have it. And this one I think we got it at a Mediterranean store because for some reason, like toilet paper, there was a run on tahini. I don't know. It was hard to find for that. I don't know what people were doing. But anyway, so I just put those two things into the bowl. And
Well, that's rubbery, isn't it?
And I hope can you still hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So what I'm going to do next, after, I'm just going to put that in there for a little bit and then scrape the sides down with the spatula. And then I'm going to be adding 2 tablespoons of olive oil to it and some garlic. One of the things that's interesting that a lot of chickpea hummus recipes want you to do is peel your chickpea. And I did not do that for this recipe, but it does make a little bit of a difference. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds like it would take you hours and hours to do. It doesn't. There is a way to do it with baking soda. I'm just going to whir this again. You put some chickpeas in a pan, you put a little bit of water in, you put about a quarter of a teaspoon of baking soda, and you bring it to a boil, and the skins will fall off the chickpeas. And then what you do is you run it under cold water, and all the skins will float to the top. It's tedious. I don't always do it, but you can do it to make a creamier hummus in the end. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's quite fluffy and whipped up. And now I'm just looking at my recipe to see I'm adding olive oil, a couple of tablespoons. And I'm going to add a clove of minced garlic to that. You could add 2 if you wanted to. I think I said that in the recipe. You could throw a couple in depending on how garlicky you like things. And then about a half a teaspoon of salt into that as well. And then I'm going to process it. And you're going to notice that we put the chickpeas in almost at the end of this recipe. And another trick to this is to get it really smooth at the end, because we're going to put the chickpeas in half a can at a time, is that we add some water to it as well. So I'm just going to scrape it down again, and then we've got a really fluffy paste here that doesn't have any chickpeas in it. And while I whir this around, I'm going to pour the water off the chickpeas and talk about that for a second. So I just used a 19-ounce, 540 ml can, and I'm saving the water because we're going to use that next. And from one of these cans, I get about a cup of liquid, and the liquid actually has a name. It's called Aquafaba, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. I'm going to put half the chickpeas in and whir it around. What's the right term for that? I don't know. Process it, and then I'll put the rest in a minute. But Aquafaba is an interesting, it's only a recent development. I mean, it's been around for a long time. But it was named in about 2015, and it's attributed to a guy in Indiana who's a vegan who was trying to figure out alternatives for things. I think I lost a chickpea on the floor. I peed on the floor. So they were trying to discover something to use instead of eggs, and for people who can't have eggs, or for vegan people. And they were doing experiments, and there's a whole Facebook group about Aquafaba and things you can do with it. And that's how I found it, was on this Facebook group probably about 4 years ago. And it was amazing to me, all the things that were happening with the liquid from the beans. I'm just turning that off for a second. I forgot to put in the cumin, half a teaspoon of ground cumin. You have to have cumin in hummus, or it won't taste right. And then the other thing I'm going to do while the thing is running is I'm going to pour in 2 to 3 tablespoons of water, and that will make it really, really creamy to finish it off. And I would probably normally run this for another minute or so. I'm just going to bring this over to show you what it looks like. You can add roasted garlic You can add roasted red peppers. Hummus is so versatile. One of the things I do with it is I take a little bit of hummus, I water it down with, it's my oven, I water it down with lemon juice and water and put some dill in it, and it makes the most amazing creamy sauce for vegetables or potatoes that doesn't have any dairy in it, lemon dill sauce. Then what I do is you adjust the hummus for salt, depending on your preference. And you can sprinkle the top of it with ground sumac, which is really nice. It's very tart. It's got a bit of a tart bite to it. Or you can use smoked paprika, which is my other favorite thing, to sprinkle on the top. And then pour more olive oil on the top. I don't know if you can see it there. But pour a little bit more olive oil on the top for serving. And then that's your hummus. So
That looks good.
questions on hummus before I jump into the next thing?
I've never actually put them in that order. I usually just stuff everything together and whir it around in the food processor, but I'm definitely going to change the way I do things because my hummus is never very fluffy, so and creamy. It's just
Yeah.
Jen, how long will that keep for?
We actually have frozen half of it before. Like I usually make a big double batch and freeze half of it.
Okay.
But you can keep that in the fridge, at least a week. We use it on like a base for sandwiches. Like I said, you can use it as a sauce if you water it down with a little lemon juice and water and add some herbs in. We usually add dill. It's really versatile. You can do, I make an appetizer with it where I spread it all out on a plate, and then I make a little parsley and tomato salad to go on top, roast some chickpeas with spices, you can buy them that way already, and sprinkle the crunchy things on top of that, make the dill lemon sauce, and then put garlic chili sauce on top, and it makes the most beautiful presentation for a dip, right, for an appetizer. So you can do lots with hummus, and I think this can was $1.24, right? So it's economical as well.
And Jen, if you add sort of like the roasted peppers or something, like at what point do you do it in the beginning or towards the end? Like where would you add it? Do you mush it up beforehand? Like
I would probably add it at the end with the chickpeas if it's roasted red peppers or roasted garlic, and then save a little bit to put as a garnish on the top. Like have a clove of roasted garlic or have some roasted pepper on the top sliced up.
So it's economical and nutritious.
And very nutritious.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jen, that is amazing because just for the first time today, my daughter told me about making vegan brownies, lactose-free with the chickpea water. I've never heard of that before. And now here you are telling us about it.
Absolutely.
That is amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna move machines here for 1 second, and I will get set up, and I will start the dessert, the meringue, and then we will go back to Julie once I tell you what I'm putting into this. But this is really fun because why waste this stuff? It's amazing. Okay. So we have 2 kids in this house allergic to eggs. One is a vegan, but she can't eat eggs. She couldn't eat eggs before, and the other one can't eat eggs either. And so this was my desperate attempt to find a way to make meringue dessert, because I wanted to make pavlova with some of that beautiful Okanagan fruit, and didn't know how to do it without eggs. The other thing about making them this way is, again, amazingly economical, right? If you used as many eggs as you would need to make the amount of meringue I'm going to show you, this one little cup is going to make 3 big pans of meringue. It's hard to believe, but it's true. So I'm going to pour a cup, whatever came out of the can, it's about a cup, into my mixer. And if you don't have a stand mixer, you can probably use a hand mixer. You'll just be standing there because it has to beat for about 6 to 8 minutes. So that's quite a bit of time. I'm going to put in a half a teaspoon of vanilla. You could use any flavor. If you wanted to use mint or almond or something else, you could do that too. And then that wasn't half, that was a quarter. I'm not looking at my stuff right here. What I did for the sugar, it's really, this is a forgivable recipe. You could use regular granulated white sugar. I threw mine in the blender for just a few moments to make it more powdery. You could probably use icing sugar, but the recipe says granulated sugar, but it did suggest to throw it in the blender a little bit if you have that, just to make it a bit creamier. And the most important ingredient is cream of tartar. And this seems like a very old-fashioned ingredient, but I think it's used in regular meringues as well. And you need a quarter teaspoon of this. This thing will last me forever, this box. And I'm just going to stir it. I'm going to stir it into the powdered, or the sugar. And then I'm going to turn on the mixer. And while the mixer is running, I'm going to pour this in, and that's all that's in this recipe. So it's the aquafaba, the vanilla, cream of tartar, and sugar. And I'm going to turn that on and pour it in there, and it's going to mix now for 6 to 8 minutes, and then we can go back to Julie while I'm doing that.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Julie, you're up.
Okay, Jen, I have a question. Have you tried using berry sugar?
I haven't.
Because berry sugar is just a finer white sugar. Instead of going through the process of putting it in your blender, you might want to think about that.
That's a good idea. Yeah. No, I haven't tried that, but that's a good point. Yeah.
I was going to ask the same question.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go. Great minds.
If you haven't, use it. It's perfect.
I have a question too. If you don't have canned chickpeas, if you've cooked the chickpeas yourself, is there any particular, because the water could be quite more diluted than what comes off the can.
And you know, I haven't tried that. I have tried with other beans, and I don't recommend it because you'll end up with a meringue that tastes like a black bean. I tried white beans, not as good. The chickpea water is the best. And we usually, I had to go out and buy a can of chickpeas because yes, we usually cook our chickpeas from dry also. But I have, when I'm not using the aquafaba, I freeze it for future use out of a can. So I have not used the stuff that we've boiled ourselves because it is watery and not as slimy. It's the sort of the viscosity of the water, which is why you rinse it off your chickpeas most of the time. I didn't bother for the hummus because it's fine to have that in there. And but yeah, definitely I haven't tried it with home cooked chickpeas.
Okay. Any other questions for Jen before we go back to cheesy chickpea toasties? Okay, so I'm going to show you guys what we've made here, or what I've made. So I've just added in the arugula, and now I've toasted. Oh, I'll show you. So I have toasted the bread, sourdough, and the little measly gluten-free piece. And I actually did both sides because that's my preference, but it's not. Sorry, I got to adjust the flour canister. There we go. So all I'm going to do now is literally just spoon the mixture on top of the bread. And obviously, the more you cover the bread, the less likely it is to burn when you put it back in the broiler. I mean, I'm doing it from hot because we just cooked this, but when I made one earlier, I just take it out of the fridge and throw it on. and it's fine. It is in there long enough when it's got the cheese on top that it warms up. If you like your meals, if you like it really hot, then just, I would throw it in the microwave to reheat it. Okay, so I'm going to just season. Salt and pepper. Can you guys see it?
Yep. Yep,
Yeah.
we can. It's great. Thanks.
And then I'm going to just top with cheese. Any cheese works. I've done Parmesan, I've done Asiago. This is mozzarella because I had it. I would suggest you slice it thinly just because you don't want it in the oven too long. Just because the bread's already cooked, and I'm just going to top it with cheese. I'm sure everyone in my house would agree, the more cheese, the better. It's probably not to drown out the flavor of the chickpeas. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back in the oven, and I'm going to pull it out once it's brown enough for your own individual liking, really. I mean, everything's cooked. So at this point, it's just about melting the cheese. I like to see it a little bit brown. So I'm just going to put it back in the oven to broil, and it'll be about, I'll show you actually, it'll be about 2 minutes. Sorry. So there you have it. If you can see it. So I'm now gonna just watch my broiler so I don't burn it and embarrass myself, and you guys maybe can have some sort of discussion while I keep an eye on the oven, Vivian and Jerry.
Sure. Anyone have any questions? Or Julie's busy, but anybody have any? Oh, sorry.
I can still talk. I just won't be in the picture.
Anyone have any questions for Julie or comments on what she's doing?
What's the berry sugar?
Oh, I'll show you.
I know.
I'll show you.
You use it to make shortbread.
No, do you? I don't. I use
do.
It for jam.
Okay, so there's such a thing.
It's just a white sugar, but it's a fine grind. So
Okay.
I use this for pavlova.
Okay.
If I have it, and if
Thank
I
you.
don't, it's really hard to get during COVID. But now I have lots. Stocked up.
That's another thing we went to find some orzo, which is a tiny little rice-shaped pasta. There's a worldwide shortage of orzo because of the pandemic. How would that happen? Why did that happen? And berry sugar, why is that happening when you can get regular sugar?
I have a theory on that. It's because everyone started baking, so they didn't make berry sugar because it's a specialty sugar, and they just focused on making regular sugar.
Could be, yeah.
That was my theory, because we couldn't find it anywhere. We searched high and low. I had my sisters, I had everyone looking for it. But during the spring, when I wanted to make my jam, couldn't find it.
Yeah. Anyone have any questions or comments?
Well, these recipes just look so delicious. And I don't cook with chickpeas, so I'm getting inspired. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I don't think it's a natural item that you just pick up off the shelf randomly.
Sometimes I put them in soup or something, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, the leftover chickpeas that I didn't use are going in our quinoa salad for later. So, you can, once you get introduced to them, you can use them in anything, really. I mean, you just start getting a bit creative.
I always have a can at home, but I don't cook.
Well, I buy them by the mouthful know.
Someone made
Yes,
it.
Jen does too. In vegetarians, we buy a lot of beans and yeah, we buy our lentils, our raw lentils in large sacks.
Oh, that looks so good.
Oh, that looks
Wow.
delicious.
So there they are.
Beautiful.
Like I said,
Mm.
you know, underneath all that, you could put a fried egg,
That's gorgeous.
scrambled eggs. You could add whatever you want. Anyways, that's
That
it.
was good timing.
Perfect. You think we've done this before, Jen?
I want to, I used too many spatulas. I need another one. I want to show you the consistency.
Yum. Wow.
Oh, it's just like regular meringue.
Like regular meringue.
Yeah, wow.
And it's perfectly white.
It's perfectly white.
Wow.
Magic.
And it doesn't taste at all like chickpeas, or is there some slight at all?
It doesn't taste like chickpeas at all. We've given this to unsuspecting people who thought it was meringue, just to see, and it isn't. So I plop it out onto a baking sheet. And one of the things that I have also done, you can put it in a piping bag, but somehow I loaned my piping bag out to somebody and I don't have it back. But you can just drop it like that if you don't have a piping bag, or you can make it all pretty and fancy. And it has to bake for about 2 hours almost,
Wow.
like at 200, like a meringue, very, very low heat for a very, very long time. So this isn't something you're going to make if you suddenly decide you want cookies at 7 o'clock at night, right? Maybe you do, I don't know. But I just put them on there. And I did earlier today make some, and some of them just came out of the oven now, and they crick crack, they make noise when they're cooling down. I dyed these ones with food coloring. They're a little bit pink. And
Oh, cool.
Wow.
you can do that. These are the plain white ones that I did earlier today. And I don't know if you can hear this. Like, it makes a lot. They're
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Wow, that's amazing.
they're light and fluffy, and I did read, I haven't tried it because they've never lasted this long, but I have heard that you can freeze them. They won't keep for too many days. They go gooey after a few days. So the idea is to put them in something airtight, maybe throw in one of those, you know, those desiccant packages you get in some food, or some dry rice or something in the bottom just to absorb any moisture. But I'm going to try freezing some, because 1 cup of Aquafaba made 3 of these pans, and now I have 6 pans. The other thing you can do with this that I have done in the summer is made, like I said, a pavlova, but you can put all of the batter onto a parchment lined pan in a circle and bake it like that for a couple of hours. And then when you pull it out, you can put custard or whipped cream and fruit and make a really nice, beautiful looking dessert. That would have to be eaten right away or it would go soggy, but you could do that with it. Some people make mayonnaise with Aquafaba. There's all sorts of recipes that would be for people who can't have egg. So it's kind of a neat thing.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jen, does anybody have any questions?
With the Aquafaba, can you store that for just in the fridge, or what would you do with that? And for a few days perhaps, or?
Yeah, we've stored it in the fridge. We've frozen it. Sometimes the kids have whipped it up without the sugar and used it almost like an omelette-y kind of thing. It's okay. There are better vegan omelet options using chickpea flour, funnily enough. Chickpea flour is also called chana flour, and we use that quite a bit for different things. Full of protein, right? Chickpeas are full of protein. But yeah, you can store it in the fridge, and I have frozen it and then thawed it and used it to make meringue. I mean, you end up with so much of it if you're buying cans of chickpeas all the time, right? So after a while, we just start pouring it out. But if you're wanting to do something different, there's lots of recipes. The Facebook group is called Vegan Meringues Hits and Misses. And it's the people that invented it, like that, well, didn't invent it, but that came up with this idea and all of their various things that they make with it. So it's kind of neat.
You gotta wonder how somebody comes up with that. Like, who would have thought to? It may come down to chemistry. I don't know, but that's kind of odd.
It did. The guy's name is Goose. From
Of course it
Indiana.
is.
A vegan from Indiana. Yeah, he was looking for alternatives and thought that as he poured out the chickpea water that it was kind of slimy like an egg white, and then got the idea, I think.
Wow.
Wow.
Interesting.
Have you ever used it, excuse me, for whipping cream? That's another recipe for the aquafaba.
I mean, you can eat this raw, unlike meringue egg whites, right? You can eat it raw. There's nothing going to happen to you if you eat it raw. So you could potentially use this uncooked as a dessert topping. One of the things that people have done is in fancy cocktails where you're supposed to put whipped egg white, people have dropped a blob of this in instead with the sugar. So yeah, I think use your imagination and you can probably do a lot of things with it.
So when you made that meringue, that's quite a bit less fussy than making pavlova, because pavlova you have to cook those egg whites.
And heaven help you if you get yolk in your egg white and you start over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the amount that makes, like,
That's
this
a
is
lot.
a big bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah. I think I'm going to try it.
Mm. My poor niece was, she loves our pavlova that we have at Christmas. I wasn't going to make it last year, and I thought she was going to cry, so I made it. And then this year, of course, none of us could be together, so she tried to make it at her house 3 times, and it would have only been her and my sister making it because my other niece is a vegan. But I'll let her know that she can make it just as well with the aqua.
That's
Faba.
interesting.
yeah. The trick would be not to put it together till right before you eat it. But but these things are great. I mean, we've put them, you know, if you make some kind of a pudding for dessert or something, you know, zabaione or some really sweet, yummy, delicious, creamy dessert, then you stick that on you know, on the dish.
They're not as fragile as pavlova either.
No, I mean, I can break one. I don't know. It is fragile.
Yeah, but they're way crispy. Yeah.
Wow. It's light and fluffy and just kind of falls apart and dissolves like
That's
a meringue would be.
gonna...
Right. So yeah.